Some audio brands wear their personality on their sleeve with pride. Klipsch is one such example, a speaker company from a town called Hope, and they're probably hoping that you'll like the object of our review today, the 7 II speakers from Klipsch. For The Absolute Sound, I'm John Quain. Although primarily thought of as an American company, Klipsch worked with Onkyo for several speaker designs, including these speakers, the 7 Series II. They join an ever-expanding line of powered wireless speakers that combine the basic features of a streaming amp with powered active speakers. It means you can stream your favorite high-res services like Qobuz directly to the speakers. You can plug a turntable into the back of the main speakers to spin some tunes, and you can even plug them into a large screen TV. Think small apartment, den, dorm room, or if you have the room, even in the kitchen. The 7 II are $2,000 for the pair, and they sit in the middle of this active speaker line from Klipsch between the smaller 5s and the bigger 9s. They stand about 15 inches tall and about 8 inches wide to give you a size comparison. These are 2-component speakers. So for the high side, there's a 1-inch titanium vented tweeter with a Tractrix horn, which is essentially a horn-like wave guide designed to direct the dispersion of the sound out of the tweeter. That's coupled with a 6.5-inch Cerametallic woofer with a rear bass reflex port. So don't put these speakers up against a wall. Before we get to what these speakers sound like, let's talk about the features. There are a lot of convenient features Klipsch has worked hard to pack into these speakers. There's 200 watts of side internal amplification, digital signal processing, of course. There's a coax digital connection and a phono stage for the turntables I mentioned. There are regular analog RCA inputs, USB inputs, a digital optical input, and a jack for a calibration mic. The speakers also support Wi-Fi, of course, and Bluetooth 5.4. Plugged in, the 7s can do 96 kilohertz, 24-bit high-res audio. For Bluetooth, you're relying on the codecs. There's that. Also included is HDMI 2.1 eARC connection. That means that you can get high-res formats like Dolby Atmos. It's the enhanced audio return channel. And it improves things like lip sync accuracy on your TV, although you can adjust this in the app. If you've ever seen the setting on your TV, sometimes you have to tweak that with some sound bars. I didn't have any issues with these speakers. The speakers are also a part of the growing array of models, like I said, that support Dolby Atmos surround sound. Although I've made this point before, with 2 speakers, you can provide a more immersive sound, putting in some of the higher channels that seem to come from above your head, but you can't do the whole 360-degree surround sound effect without adding physically those other speakers, say for a 7.1 surround sound system or a 9.1 channel surround sound system. These do a great job. They're certainly better than an expensive soundbar, but if you really want surround sound, you have to go the whole 9 yards. Speaking of sonic adjustments, Klipsch includes a Dirac Live standard license with the speakers, as well as a microphone for making the calibrations. It only takes a few minutes using the included software to to set up a particular room. Sometimes it makes a substantial difference, and so it's worth experimenting if you choose these speakers. So how do you control this welter of features on the Klipsch Sevens? Well, there's actually a manual control on top of one of the speakers. That's a retro-like wheel that you can adjust the volume with and a button to select the particular inputs. They also supply a remote control, backlit remote control, for which you can adjust volume. Very nice detail, not those kind of digital jumps that you get on some remotes, as well as inputs and backtrack, forward track, those basic controls. And there's a third way, via an app, of course, for your smartphone. The app includes support for direct streaming services like Spotify and Qobuz Connect. The app also does the usual duties for selecting inputs and the volume. And there are also 3 preset audio settings: movie, music, and direct. Movie tends to emphasize dialogue frequencies. Music gives it some bottom end emphasis, and direct keeps it clean. I found the movie mode delivered too much mid-range that tended to thicken the sound. Although many listeners prefer this kind of sonic profile, audiophiles will keep this setting off. So now we get to the heart of the matter. What do these actually sound like? When you think of Klipsch, you'll probably think of horn tweeters. This ain't them. But if you're a fan of the Klipsch sound, you'll not be disappointed with the Sevens. On the other hand, if you're not an adherent of Klipsch sound, you probably aren't going to be won over by the Sevens. Or maybe you will, depending on your practical needs. First off, these speakers are not for easy listening. If Burt Bacharach is your bag, these probably aren't going to be your thing. These are big, loud, and proud, very American speakers. So to get them moving, you have to start moving air at over 72 dB in that kind of range. In my listening position, at least that's what I found, before they really start to come into their own and achieve a kind of aliveness, something that many listeners will find these speakers lack at lower volumes. They don't sound muffled at quieter volumes, but they do sound more, well, flatter is how I describe them, or more monochromatic at low levels. Rock vocals jump out nicely on these when you get the volumes up, as if they were on the PA on a summer stage show. But some keyboard work that's supposed to jump forward in some mixes can be overpowered by bass guitar work. Just getting that out there as part of the sonic profile. For those who remember blindingly bright horn tweeters of yore from Klipsch, some people loved them, some people not so much. Again, these ain't them. You're not going to complain about brightness here. And the soundstage is traditional stereo. It doesn't extend soundstage excessively, Dolby Atmos notwithstanding. If the mix has it rolling tom-toms from one speaker to the other, you're not going to miss that effect, but the Sevens aren't going to try to artificially extend the soundstage. So for some specific music examples, let's start with Deep Purple's hard rock classic record, which is Machine Head. It has 3 iconic tracks on it: Highway Star, Space Truckin', and of course that guitar solo extraordinaire, Smoke on the Water. At lower volumes, look, these speakers can sound like they lack some headroom, although the transient response is clearly there. All the instrumental details come out, so you're not missing anything. It just lacks the exquisite blast that can come out, whether it's a Beethoven symphony or a guitar-driven chorus, until you turn the speakers up. A music genre that does benefit from this sonic profile right away is electronic music. An example there would be Kraftwerk's Morgen Spaziergang, which means morning walk or stroll. It's been remastered from the Autobahn album, and it features some very nicely enunciated voicing, as it were, of the composition. These speakers do very well with that soundscape. It's quite effectively reproduced by the Sevens. And in jazz, sometimes it can overplay the stand-up bass. An example for me was Miles Davis's record Kind of Blue, and where I thought the horn was nicely revealed by the Klipsch Sevens. The bass of Paul Chambers was a little bit overemphasized. Chambers often gets overlooked on this record because the record also features Coltrane and Evans, but the Klipsch Sevens, they won't forget that Chambers is right there. So I was recently fortunate enough to see Jean Rondeau perform at Carnegie Hall, and so I wanted to hear some of his harpsichord music again over these speakers, having just heard it live, and see what it sounded like. So I checked out Dynasties. It's a record from 2017. It's the Bach harpsichord concertos. There's the father, Johann, and then there's the 2 sons. It's a great record. And in fact, the liveliness of that record, which he is really well known for playing in the harpsichord, really came off extraordinarily well on these speakers. I was not expecting it at all, given what I had heard the weeks previous to this. So it really depends on the recording and what the instrument is. This was really a pleasing result, I found. Another result over weeks and weeks of testing and auditioning, futzing about with the components, features, I often came across, something that really brought out the speaker's strengths. In this case, with the Klipsch Sevens Series II, the recording turned out to be, yes, their prog rock classic from 1972 was close to the edge. It's in a high-res remastered version. You hear on these speakers Bill Bruford's percussive flourishes, Steve Howe's unique style on that Gibson ES-175, and really, really well rendered by the Klipsch speakers, I have to say, at the appropriate volumes, which now I was in tune to all the time. And yes, Chris Squire's bass sound is appropriately thick as well here. So what criteria should you use when considering the Klipsch Sevens II speakers? Well, there's that feature set, which stacks up very well against other sub-$2,000 speakers in this category, that is to say, wireless powered speakers. And then there's the sound profile, which carries the distinctive Klipsch, can we say, American band style of reproduction. Yeah, we put some Grand Funk Railroad through them. We just couldn't help it. Maybe you won't be able to resist either. If you enjoyed this review, if you found it helpful, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the Absolute Sound video channel. There's also a newsletter and, of course, the Absolute Sound magazine. Consider subscribing to that as well. For the Absolute Sound, I'm John Quain.